Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Soul Seekers podcast, where we believe that hunting has the power to transform lives through primal adventure as we share our mission of mentorship is conservation. To learn more about everything we do, check out our show on Carbon TV or go to soulseekersnation.com. Freedom on, everybody, and stay soulful. Do you want to become a better shooter, reduce flinch, protect your ears, and just overall enjoy shooting your gun that much more? Then there's no better way to do that than by adding a suppressor to the end of your barrel. Be sure to check out Huxwrx Safety Co, as they are a leader in the suppressor world with their OSS Flow-Through Technology, virtually eliminating blowback and toxic gas that can affect weapon system performance and shooter health. To find out more about Huxwrx, go to huxwrx.com. That's huxwrx.com, and go get yourself a suppressor for your upcoming hunts. This podcast is also proudly brought to you by OnX Hunt. When I first got into hunting, I kept hearing all about public land and different access and how to find different locations to hunt. I was like, well, how are people even identifying all this stuff? Well, sure enough, I came across the number one hunting GPS app, and that is OnX Hunt. If you guys want to get better at hunting and go deeper into your scouting, OnX Hunt is the number one GPS app for that. Join the millions of hunters who trust OnX Hunt to find more game, discover new access, and hunt smarter. It was a game changer for me, and I know it's going to be a game changer for you if you've never used it. If you have used it, you know the power that it holds. Guys, I really hope you enjoy this episode. If you want to know more about OnX, go to onxmaps.com/hunt. And check out their app. Be blessed, freedom on, and stay soulful. If you're in the market for optics, I want you to go check out blackdiamondoptics.com. Black Diamond Optics offers world-class sporting and tactical optics, including thermals, all at wholesale pricing, direct to consumer. They are going to be partnering up with us for 2023, and I want to start pointing you over towards their direction. Check out Black Diamond Optics. If you've got any questions about it, shoot us a message. Love to hear from you. Be blessed, everybody. All right, guys, if you're looking for a better way to stay hydrated this coming hunting season and on all your adventures in the future, go check out hardsidehydration.com. Their swig rig is awesome, an absolute game changer when it comes to staying hydrated. I get tired of playing around with any water bladders in my bag and having to remove things to get to them and the chance of them puncturing and all that. So what Hardside did, take Nalgene's, got multiple sizes, and you're attaching your hose straight to that. Keep it on the outside of your pack, a lot easier to use. They also have a lot of other cool things. Go check out hardsidehydration.com. Use the code SOULSEEKERS10. That's all one word. Save yourself 10% at checkout. Hope you guys enjoy this podcast. Be blessed. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Soul Seekers podcast. I'm your host, Johnny Mack, and tonight I am joined by a phenomenal human being, somebody who, ironically, left the digital world to find himself in the wilderness of the West and wanted to connect with his soul in a more meaningful and purposeful way. The author of the book, Turning Feral, Zachary Craig Hanson. He is a guy who has gone through a modern journey of hunting, trapping, and living intentionally in the wilderness. And what we're going to be talking about tonight is a couple of follow-ups. I just got done reading his book. If you have not read his book, you need to go check it out. I highly recommend it. It's in the top 10 within that hunting outdoor space on Amazon. And phenomenal read, quick read, great insight, and will really, really challenge you on how you view yourself and view yourself within the world. So without further ado, we're going to be diving into some deeper topics. Last episode that we released last week was the unknown is the fun part. Talking about the universal truths of hunting. We had editor-in-chief Andrew McKeon of Outdoor Life magazine on, diving into that topic. We're going to continue on with that a little bit more because one of the amazing things about Zach is he used to work, or maybe still does, we're going to find out, in artificial intelligence. And so as you've come to know what I believe and stand for is the whole idea of hunting is human, hunting returns us to the roots of humanity and all of that. It's ironic. There's a beautiful irony there that the guy who wanted to turn feral was caught up in artificial intelligence in a robot life. So without further ado, Zach Hanson, my man, brother, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. It's we're recording this later in the evening, and as we were talking a little bit before we hit the record button, I've been out on a trap line most of the morning. I got to do it with my daughter, so it was a great day. Didn't trap anything, but other than that, man, we're living the life out here in the woods.
At the end of the dirt road, huh?
That's it, man. We are at the end of our 80-mile dirt road in our little tiny cabin of Atlanta, Idaho, and just making it by day.
I love it. I love it. How long have you been in Idaho now?
Man, it's coming up on 5 years. So half a decade is what's crazy about when you say it, or when you put it in that context, it seems it seems so short, but then when you say half a decade, 5 years, it seems really long.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm about to hit, so this coming May, I turned 40. When
Yep.
I turned 30 is when that summer, so I turned in May, I took my hunter safety course in the summer after my 30th birthday. I will be completed with my very first decade of officially being a hunter. And
That's awesome.
it is really weird to think back on and be like, wow, I still feel like I'm new. But I guess if you've been in it for 10 years, although if you count it based off of when you kill your first animal, so that was in 2017. So
Yeah.
that's not what, 7, 8 years? No,
Yeah.
7 years.
7 years for you. Then for me as an adult onset hunter too, my first animal kill was 2019. So I'm a little behind. So I'm up on 4, going on 5 years myself just for my first
Yeah,
harvest.
dude, it's so wild. I just yesterday picked up my boys. So I have 3 boys. My oldest is going to be 9 in December. He shot his very first animal, which was a little spike buck here in Texas this last fall on youth weekend, and just a phenomenal experience. My middle son, he just turned 7 in October. I took him out for his very first hunt, a deer hunt. I was like, all right, you're 7 years old. This is what you want to do. And we sat in a blind early in the morning, and he got a chance to shoot himself a doe.
Wow.
And phenomenal until the most heaviest torrential downpour rain happened, and we lost all sign of blood.
Yep. I've been there.
All sign of blood, which I know you've been there. You talked about it in your book, and so this is something that I haven't necessarily released publicly because I'm still fighting through it. Right? It's like I'm not only I have this, and I think this is a part of the stuff that we're going to talk about in the episode today is we have this responsibility to take care of ourselves, honor the animals, but then when it comes to passing it on, we want it to be a high quality experience. And
Yep.
we never can, as much as we want to box it up and say, hey, this is going to be the outcome, or, like these are the steps, bada bing, bada boom, done. It never is like that.
Nope.
And,
Never is.
And my middle son, who was so excited, and he did a great job, and I filmed it, and we were going to make it into an episode of Soul Seekers, and we lost that deer.
Yeah, but it's part of it, as you know. It is just it's hard when it's your child, I am sure, like probably tenfold of what it would be if it was just you losing that deer.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a part of it, and probably the way you framed it for him and explained it, it was heartbreaking. But there's going to be another time.
Yeah, definitely. How's your journey been? So I just got done reading your book just a few days ago. Have you transformed even more since writing that?
Yeah, and maybe not in the way you might expect. It's from the time of writing the book, I was all in, right? All in, being out here at the cabin all the time, trapping, hunting, just fire hose accumulation of knowledge. And it's still like that for the most part. But in that interim too, I've grown my family. As
Hmm.
you know, I've got two kids with another on the way, and what's been interesting is we've had to kind of recalibrate a little bit about what's feasible and where we live. And in fact, we ended up buying a second home in Boise just because we were having to go back and forth so much with doctor's appointments, and we didn't have family there. It was becoming a bit of a hassle when we'd have to load up two dogs, two kids, us, drive 4 hours to spend a few hours to go to some doctor's appointments, to grocery shopping. So we ended up getting a small place there just so we could land, and that's caused us to split our time a little bit more than my wife or I probably had originally intended. But you know, the journey is continued, and we spend most of our time at the cabin. However, you know, we're having to dip our toe back into a little bit more of modern life in some instances, and that's been almost equally as hard to adjust to as just being a full time mountain man.
Right. Right. Yeah, I can only imagine like this whole idea of, well, I mean, just kind of look at the mountain man life. It's a lonely, isolated life. So the minute that you start being a family man,
Yep.
it really transform you into being able to do both and figure out how you're gonna make it work.
Yeah,
Um,
so it's a hierarchy of priorities, right? When I first moved to the mountains, I had no kids. I was recently divorced. Uh, I was a little bit of buck the world. I
mm,
wanted to prove myself as a mountain man, and then started that journey, and then met my now wife, and started the family journey, and that changes the priorities. So my family, my wife, my kids are my number one priority. Their safety is my number one priority. So we aren't driving up during avalanche season as often, or we're waiting till weather stabilizes, and it just kind of changes the calculus around how we operate compared to where it was in the book when I wrote it.
right. You know, you can always take care of yourself if need be, but when you have little tiny faces and eyes to look into, and you're like, "Oof, okay, I'm not gonna put you through that as well."
Well, it's
Yeah.
funny, I took my so we have a 2.5-year-old. She's just gung ho. She's amazing. Curious, loves the outdoors. She cries when you bring her inside most of the time. But I had the opportunity to take her on my beaver trap line um, this past week. It was just her and I every day, and she did awesome. But we had about an hour of driving each morning to get up into the rivers where we wanted to go to. She was out there when I was setting them, and she had her little waders on. She was super adorable. But man, it was tough. I got everything set, but it was not as perfect as I wanted to. It's not as you know well thought through. I kind of rush things, and then what's funny or not funny, it's kind of goes back to you losing the deer. When we came back and checked the next day, I had caught a beaver, but I had not tightened one of my drowning rods as well as I needed to,
Mm.
and I lost the beaver by the foot, so I just had a foot in the trap. So now there's a three-legged beaver out swimming around, and I feel pretty bad about that. But it just comes with the territory of trying to do stuff with kids now.
Yeah, I will say that, on top of me taking my son out for his first hunt, I was also filming it. And so there's this
Hmm.
perspective of like, okay, I need to make sure I get the content, but then I also need to make sure I'm present with him and walking him through the moment and all this. And I have regrets from the hunt. Um, I wish a third person would have been there to film so that
Yep.
I could play dad
Yep.
wholeheartedly and then be more present because he made a great shot and this deer I thought was going to fall over. It ran off and it was standing out in the field and it looked like I was like, is it going to fall over? Is it going to fall over? I could have grabbed the gun and reset it up for him and have him shoot
Uh,
it again, and I didn't. And it ended up, we gave it time, let it walk off, and uh, blood stopped after the rain, and that was that. I was like,
yep.
the other thing I will say, tracking animals in Texas, very difficult. I didn't realize this being a Western hunter. When you hunt the mountains, the terrain dictates where an animal goes.
Yeah. They're going to go in a draw, at least resistance.
Downhill, like they're gonna like there's ways to, well, when everything's relatively flat and it's a lot of briars or stickers or brush oak and all sorts of stuff, it's like, okay, everything is a game trail. Like it's just everything crisscrosses and there's tracks all over the place. So it's like, oh, where I spent hours looking, went back home, got my other boy, the older one. We all three of us went back out. We're searching for it. Nothing. And then you're also playing property boundary lines, that is a whole nother mental trap
Yeah.
that I need to overcome, which it only requires a phone call, but I didn't have any like evidence to show.
Contacts or,
Yeah. So, all right, let's get into the book a little bit more. A couple questions I have, and by the way, all you listeners, if you want to hear more about Zach's story and his book, episode 206 of the podcast, we did an episode with Zach, Turning Feral in a Domesticated World, that came out March 13th of this last year. So go check that out to hear more about the book, as we are going to touch on some topics from it. There's some questions I had as a reader, but I want to progress on to some of the other topics as well. So first off, Zach, you and your the way you recounted your stories of encountering wolves and that being your spirit animal, like fascinating, truly fascinating. Did you always know that a wolf was your spirit animal?
Yeah, I did, and I touched on it a little bit in the book, but All of the Wild, those books as a kid, my grandfather had a cabin in Georgia, which is where I was born and raised, and he always had this oil painting of a wolf, and I was just always drawn to it. And, it was kind of a latent thing. Like I always was attracted to wolves, just loved the idea and what they embodied, I guess. And then when I went out to Idaho for the first time, I saw my first wolf in real life. And then it was kind of downhill from there as far as me continuing my interest level. And,
Uh-huh.
talked about in the book, I had yet to trap or shoot a wolf, but last week or the week before, I was out helping someone elk hunt and was able to take my first wolf after tracking some for a while. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, so we were gonna get into that also and just talk about that. So, where do I want to start? Oh, here we go. I'm gonna make sure I stay on track here. In your book, you talk about a psilocybin trip. I'm
Yep.
assuming that you were alone in the woods in the dark, like intentionally going hand in hand. Give me everything that this wild has, and let's face it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I wasn't alone. So I was with a friend. I've never been a drug user. I've always been about as vanilla as they come, alcohol and occasional marijuana. But post divorce, as I was going through this experience, I had a buddy who had mushrooms. He's like, "Hey, you should try this." I've always heard about it. It's natural, so I kind of talked myself into it. And I had tried it a little bit, and I had enjoyed very small amounts. And then we were out on a hunt that was already done with, so we took some mushrooms and we kind of went out in the woods. And it was in an area that had a lot of wolves, and they started howling, and then we started howling back, and it was just a very intimate moment um, of my journey where I was just very much in tune with nature as close as I've ever been, and specifically with an animal that I found a lot of spiritual power from. And it sounds very woo woo, and I'm not a very woo woo person.
I'm a woo woo person though, so I want to hear, like, talk about it. Talk about the woo that you experienced.
Yeah, it was for me, that particular experience was where I had confirmation that I was where I was supposed to be.
Yeah.
You know, going on this journey from a white picket fence life to saying, "Hey, I am now a wilderness." I'm not going to say aficionado because I'll never get there, but I was all in. And there were moments of doubt where I was failing at hunting. It's way harder than you expect it to be, especially out west. You have naysayers, you have people wondering, like, what the heck are you doing out there? Like, you're an desk jockey. Like, oh, why? Like, oh, I don't understand what you're getting out of this. And those questions creep in and start to chip away at the armor you've built of your own why. And the fact that I'd had this spiritual connection to this animal and then had this opportunity with the help of some mushrooms to, you know, sit deep in the woods in the White Cloud wilderness and have a conversation with this animal, it was the cementing moment that I was like, I am where I'm supposed to be. And I am okay with where I'm at in that journey, which is very much a novice approach,
Hmm.
to be frank.
Fascinating. What's up, Soul Seekers Nation? Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. I really appreciate it. As a reward, I have some discount codes for you to use if you are in the market for a brand new hunting pack. Go check out initialascent.com and Initial Ascent packs. They are made in America. Their one-piece carbon frame is an absolute game changer. We run their packs. We love them. And you can save 5% at checkout by using the code SOULSEEKERS. That's all one word. Also, for those of you who are archery hunters and you are tired of shooting at dots on a target, check out deadnutsoutdoors.com for their lifelike 2D archery targets. You can save 20% on all of their products by using the code SOULSEEKERS at checkout. Once again, the code is SOULSEEKERS, all one word. Go check out initialascent.com and Dead Nuts Outdoors. Enjoy the podcast. Fascinating. Okay. Can I share my story with you right now?
Yeah,
Because
sure.
this is where I connected as a reader with your book and your story and your journey, also being an adult onset hunter and all that. So I started being a hunter through backpacking, being a
Mhm.
backpack wilderness hunter because I used to coach high school football. And the first couple weeks of August, I would backpack. And then when I realized that those are the same times in which bear season's open,
Mhm.
I was like, well, I guess out of all the things I'm going to hunt, I'm going to be a bear hunter. However, I had an experience when I was in second grade. I hiked a portion of the Pacific Crest Trail, and I had someone who was not a family member pretend to be a bear in the woods to a little like second grader. Like
Uh,
that's a 7-year-old kid. I
mhm.
I was scared to death from that moment on of
Yep.
bears in the woods. So the irony of this story of my journey is that I also lived a very scared life,
Mhm.
um, timid, afraid, lack of courage. I wasn't a very brave human being.
Yep.
Brave in certain endeavors, like, I'll face adversity, but inside, I trembled. I was
Yeah.
afraid. So here I was backpacking in the wilderness um, to pursue black bears, and I'm laying in my tent that first night up in camp, and I'm like, oh man, I really hope a bear doesn't come into camp. And I'm like, wait, no, that would make it easier. Like, let's just get it over with. That's the whole point of being here. So long story short, and I've told the story multiple times, and I don't want to take up too much of it. I ended up chasing a bear down on that hunt and getting within 30 yards of it, and the world slowed down,
Mhm.
and I stared and locked eyes with this bear before I shot it, and I could see the fear in its eyes.
Mhm.
And the interesting thing is that when you were telling your story, I set the book down and I went to the internet and I typed in how to find out your spirit animal.
Mhm.
And there's there's stuff all over the place, but there was like, oh, here's a 10-question quiz to let you know, identify your spirit animal. And so inherently, I'm like, well, dude, I'm more drawn to bears because of my foundation within the hunting realm for that. So I think, but none of the questions I asked like really would point me towards one direction or the other. Turns out, based off that quiz, my spirit animal is a bear.
Oh,
And And one of the things is that when your spirit animal is a bear, that means it's time to be courageous.
There you go.
When a bear stands tall, it's time to be courageous. And I'm like, wow. Like
Yeah.
I don't
That's beautiful.
I don't believe in coincidences. There's a full on connection um, from I always talk about on this podcast that life is a mirror. It's only a reflection of ourselves. If you have a negative outlook, you're going to be getting nothing but negative in. If you have a positive outlook, you're going to get nothing but positive in. We get to create our own existence. So, was the bear fearful? Did the bear look like it was fearful? Or was that just a reflection of me looking at the bear in that exact moment when I crested the concept of hiking with a weapon to I have now achieved and taken the life of my very first animal?
Yeah. I mean, that's beautiful on a lot of different levels. And I resonate with that. And I resonate with your story from being a youth. Like I can't remember if I talk about it in the book, to be honest, but I was a fearful kid too. It wasn't, I didn't have an encounter with wolves as a kid, but I was always afraid of the things that would bump in the night. I was afraid of really everything. Similarly to you, I was not afraid of adversity. I did hard things, enjoyed them, but I did live a fearful life. And it sounds like you kind of came full circle, just like I recently have with, you know, there's almost I feel like if you have a spirit animal, for me, a wolf, for you, a bear, that ability to almost conquer it because it's probably a reflection of our own fears and power that we think we might have. Like maybe latently you felt you had that power of a bear, even though it held so much power over you from a fear perspective. Same with me for wolves. And then, I talk about in the book, like I wanted to face that. I wanted to it's almost like killing yourself. That sounds really weird.
Yeah,
And that's
no.
for like, we can talk about suicide and all that, but I'm talking about just like killing the ego, killing everything that you feel you are represented in the spirit animal
Hmm.
and almost burying it, and that being that catalyst to finally grow. And that's how I felt with mine, like killing my spirit animal. And I'm not sure if you had a similar experience with locking eyes, seeing that bear, and then, being able to take its life.
I think killing the ego is a phenomenal way of talking about that. So, do you know the characteristics of what a wolf represents as a spirit animal to you off the top of your head?
Uh, I'll say what I think, and then you can tell me what the actual stuff is if you've got it pulled up. So for me, a wolf represents community, the ability to be alone and be powerful, and to emit a radiance of confidence. That's kind of where I would go off the top of my head.
Okay. Just random website. Typing stuff in, meaning of wolf spirit animal. Strong connection with your instincts and intuition. High
Okay.
intelligence, loyalty and communication, which I mean, to be able to write a book, you got to be a great communicator. A deep desire for freedom.
Yeah.
And then loyalty and trust. I mean, that sounds like you and everything that you described in your book and how I know you and how you've talked about yourself. So, um, spot on. Here's what it is for a bear, by the way.
Let's hear it.
Um, strength, protection and courage, ferocity, nobility, patience, playfulness, and curiosity.
There you go. How's that feel? Is that, I mean, from what I know about you, it seems to fit the bill. That
I put a smile on my face when I read that. And I was like, oh yeah, because people say, oh, you're a teddy bear concept, right? What is a teddy bear? It's playful. It's like cuddly, but yet when time gets going, you turn it on. Um, but the courage thing, holy smokes, man! Talk about a revelation right now in this episode. I told you we were gonna go deep and philosophical on this. I didn't realize like this is where it's leading so far. Um, so tell your story. You just recently killed your very first spirit animal.
Yeah, I did. It's interesting. I had a buddy who drew a rifle tag in the unit that I live in. So he was flying out from South Carolina, his first elk hunt. So I'd been out scouting both for my own wolf trap line and for elk a couple weeks before he came out. And I was on wolf constantly. I was finding calf kills, real fresh scat, um, real deep in the backcountry in the wilderness, lots of sign. Went hunting with another buddy for deer, and we got busted by wolves, and it was just kind of, it was right there. I could feel them. So then the week goes by, and usually these wolves are on a 30-day cycle. So like, there's no way they're going to be up in the same drainage. So my buddy who had the bull elk tag and we went up in this really steep, really deep backcountry drainage, hiked way, way, way back. And sure enough, those wolves were there again. And, we were out there with rifles, and, it was a situation where they were kind of up on a ridge and they went up, and there was a straggler, thankfully. Maybe uh, that's why I got the opportunity, but there was a juvenile female. She's probably 2 or 3 years old, but she was straggling, and I was able to get within a couple hundred yards and put her down. And when we got to her, I put her on my pack and I hiked her the 6 miles back to where our little spike camp was. And I was starting to skin her out, do all those things. And I just got this terrible whiff. And it turns out she had an injury. So she had been bitten on her back. I don't know if it was from another pack mate or a mountain lion or what it was, but it had been infected. So she had been losing weight and was not able to keep up with the pack. So, kind of did her a favor because she was going to be left behind anyways at some point soon. But, it was a right time, right place, frankly.
Man, life size mount.
No, no. The sad part was her infection was so bad on her back. I wasn't able to save a lot of the hide. And, I do a lot of putting up fur, and it just wasn't worth saving. So I ended up cutting off her head, and I ended up skinning out her face. So I'll make a little mask for my kids. But yeah,
Dude,
it was pretty cool.
that's awesome. Did you feel like you could release a deep breath that you've been holding for a long time?
Yeah. And I'm saying this, I'm kind of looking to the side and thinking on it a little bit more deeply. I mean, as with anything, you put a lot of time, effort, expectation around I always use the analogy of like the dog who chases the parked car and then gets up to the parked car, and it's kind of like, okay, like great.
Like
You know,
that's it. Yeah.
it's a little bit like there was a moment for sure, and I was excited, but it felt for me like, to me, it felt as though that were like the head nod from those packs, say like, okay, you're worthy of going after us now. Like now you can actually really go after. It's like you're a worthy adversary almost
Mm,
now. That's what it felt like to me, more than like a pat on the back and a high five. And it was that burial, that spirit animal, and almost a fruition of being one with those animals now. And now they're like, yep, you're part of the pack now. And now you can actually pursue us in earnest. Is how I kind of viewed it.
I love
And
that.
I got a lot more work to do though.
I was on a hunt. This is probably, I think this was filmed in season one of Soul Seekers. This was probably like 3 or 4 years ago now, where we were on a mule deer hunt in the state of Washington, and we ran into a guy who ended up shooting a deer that I would say if I was to shoot a deer, it would have been the one I would have shot
Yeah.
because I was on tracks. It was snowing, on tracks with deer. Um, but we were running low on light, so instead of following the tracks, we went and did some glassing from a knob. He ended up shooting it over by where I expected this deer to be. So what ended up happening is we heard the gunshot, and so we came over, and there he was with the deer, and we filmed it all. And go back and check out this episode. But the guy ends up on all his hunts, cuts the heart out, and he buries it on the mountain.
Interesting.
And he was like, "Yeah, the meat's in the freezer, but the heart's in the hills."
Huh.
And I was like, I dig that. I dig that.
Yeah.
It's like, obviously we honor animals in whatever form or fashion we want to, but the concept, I think, with a spirit animal, and the next time I get an opportunity to shoot a bear, that is going to be something I specifically am going to do, and more or less maybe have a little own personal ceremony in some sort of fashion. All right, everybody, thank you so much for listening to this episode. As a thank you, I got more discount codes for all of you. If you are in the market for anything in regards to calls, whether it's elk calls, turkey calls, deer, or predator calls, you can save 15% on all Rocky Mountain hunting calls by using the code SOULSEEKERS. That's all one word. And if you're in the market for hard side hydration, a better way to hydrate, go check out hardsidehydration.com. Use the code SOULSEEKERS10 to save 10%. And we also have a discount at Graxaw.com. That is, Graxaw is the leader in ultralight game bags and other backcountry gear. Light, fast, and efficient is their motto. Use the code SOULSEEKERS, all one word, to save 10% at checkout.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I love that idea. And same with the wolves for me. I think everybody's probably drawn to a particular animal for whatever reason that, you know, why people become bear hunters like you, or why people get so interested and enamored with wolves or mule deer or elk or, marten or whatever it is. And I think that ceremony, that respect of that passing of knowledge and passing of life lessons along the way is something deserving of those animals. And that's a pretty cool story you've got there with the heart in the hills and the meat in the freezer. It's a shame that deer heart and elk heart taste so dang good.
Right. Right. Is you're like, "Oh man, that's a fine meal right there you're putting in the
Yeah.
ground." So, um so what's next? You've officially become a woodsman.
Hmm.
You're beyond a hunter. You're beyond a trapper. You're a woodsman. You have a skill set now to find animals, whether you are carrying a weapon or you're carrying string or wire. I guess is really the correct term. Like you could do it. Do you feel
Yep.
a drive or a call to take it to another level and like apply for the TV show Alone or something like that, or are you content with where you're at in your journey?
Truthfully, I'm content. Honestly, like I don't, you know, coming from the world and touch on this in the book, you touched on it a little bit at the beginning of the podcast. Like I came from the world of artificial intelligence. So I come from a world of where the last over a decade I've been part of teams who've built algorithms for social media, for, banking applications, like whatever the case may be. And that was a big push for me and a little bit of a turnoff from a lot of the modern aspects. Like I love content. I love consuming content. I don't know if I have the heart for, being on a TV show or to publicly test myself on my skills as a woodsman. If the opportunity arose, like sure, I'd consider it. I'm positive, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not a desire. So to answer your question, I'm very content. And I'm content in continuing to learn. And I've talked a lot about this on a bunch of different podcasts, but trapping's kind of stolen my heart in a lot of regards. Like I love hunting, but trapping is just such an interesting, intimate experience with animals. And it's something that is not perfected easily. And it's going to be a lifetime of me trying to continue to figure these things out. And I am content with continuing on that path of, just trying to slowly become a little bit more in tune with my environment and the animals that I'm trying to target.
Mm-hmm. Right, right. That makes sense. Let's shift gears into this whole idea of AI. So I'm on a
Yeah.
journey. Um, I've created this platform all around the idea that there are people in this world similar to you, similar to me, that want more out of life.
Yep.
They're not happy with where they are, where they're going, or what they've done in the past. And regardless of money, it, you know, job, clout, whatever, they feel empty. I felt empty. I felt like I was not living my truest form as a human being. And so I find it how I want to hear your perspective because you've lived this journey, but you also have such an intimate tie with artificial intelligence and the robot life. And so I've been going down this road of, my mission is mentorship is conservation. And I
Yep.
believe that hunting has the power to transform lives through the primal adventure of what it is. So I
Yep.
always talk about this primal adventure, primal adventure. And so this is an off-air conversation for my book that I'm diving into. But I want to really hammer home because not everybody wants to be a hunter, and I don't
Mhm.
expect everyone to be a hunter. What I do expect is everyone have respect for a hunter and to support a hunter for what they do for themselves and their community, right? The tribal roles. Not everyone has to be bringing home the meat, but everyone wins when that person does their job. So
Yep.
the idea that I wanted more in my life, you wanted more in your life, there's something, the call of the wild is there. So my thing is, and I talked about this on this last episode with Andrew McKeon, is I talk about adventure in people's lives is something that everyone needs, craves. We do not
Yep.
like mundane boredom, repetitiveness. Not everyone wants an adventure in the mountains, wilderness, but they need some sort of excitement and adventure. And Andrew, he said, "Well, yeah, they don't want to know the outcome, and it challenges the courage. It overcomes the fear." And he goes, "If I was to ever hunt any sort of like canned high fence hunt where I know the outcome
Mhm.
beforehand," he goes, "if that was hunting for me, I don't think I would hunt." He goes,
Mhm.
he's like, hunting for me is not knowing the outcome, and that's what is makes it so exciting. So our concept was, well, hunting is human. He goes, well, hunting is human, but it used to be human. I don't know if it's human anymore. And I was like,
Mhm.
ooh, what's your thought? What's your first initial reaction when I'm sharing that?
My first reaction is, I mean, there's not a video here, but I was nodding my head, right? I was kind of in subtle agreement with everything you were saying, but I think it's still human. And I think what people crave, and I think what I love, not what I think, what I love about what you're trying to push here is hunting is conservation and pushing folks to not necessarily go hunting yourself if you're not into that, but to be able to support it is great. But I think it all, like this desire right now, is probably higher than it's ever been in history, which might sound counterintuitive because everybody's tied to their phones, people are tied to their computers. Our jobs don't necessarily dictate for people to be outdoors anymore. You can sit at a computer, 8 hours a day, make your money, and never have to step foot outside. But I think there is a latent, ingrained push for nature. And what has happened with AI and what you see in the news is there is a distortion in reality of what is real and what is not real. You see it on the news every day. You could take any news headline at face value. It might be completely false. It takes effort to go and debunk something. It takes effort to really solidify a truthful, factual position. But what is easy is to go outside, take your shoes off, and put your feet on the ground and feel something real.
Mm-hmm.
What is easy is to go out and grab a rifle and hunt a mule deer in the mountains, and that's real. So I think whether people know it or not, and whether they want to go start a garden and see if plant dies or not, like the natural world is the last vestige that we have left on Earth that is just so black and white in its objective factualness
Mm-hmm.
that it's drawing people to it. And you know, everything else is a blur.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else has a gray area that you have to actually make a conscious effort to think about to understand whether it's real or not. And I think that's the draw and, the dichotomy of where AI and everything else is pushing us to this more blurred question of what reality is, yet we still can go out our front door and put our feet in the grass and know what reality really is the stark contrast.
Yeah. So doing research for my book and diving into my topic more, I was always raised by my father who told me he repeated it to me all the time. He was also my high school football coach, so the way a coach talks to his athletes, and you pick up on things. He would always say, "Courage is the first known trait of mankind."
Mm-hmm.
Courage, because from courage, everything else comes. And so I was like, okay, so if hunting is human, then that means courage is human.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so what does it mean to be human in an artificial world? And so I started to look up the definition of courage. So courage is the ability to do something that frightens you.
Yep.
Strength in the face of pain or grief. Mental or moral strength to venture, persevere, and withstand danger, fear, or difficulty. We, in an AI insulated bubble,
Yep.
do not face that.
Nope.
The minute that we can power off something or remove ourselves from a screen is the minute that we're like, oh, we're safe. Oh, okay, I'm done. Protect myself behind a firewall or a VPN or like whatever it is. Like, oh, I got all these barriers. I'm comfortable. So, what does it mean to like really be human? For me, I wrote right here is to be human is to feel, to need, to connect with self and the world around you, to be scared, nervous, excited, love, be loved, pain, joy, sorrow, have bravery, have courage. This is why I think your story of turning feral is so powerful, because as you were talking about sitting on this airline in a high class pretending to read a book because that's what you're supposed to do in that type of scene, and like you're putting on this facade of something that's not real. And humanity wants real. We want to be scared. We want the unknown. We want that adventure in our life. Are you continually being fulfilled through this? Or do you feel like, okay, I've checked that box and now I'm ready to do something else?
The former being like, and I talk about this with my wife a lot, especially when we're up at the cabin as much as we are. It's in a world that's powered by algorithms, that's feeding you what it thinks you want to see or hear or learn about, even if it's stuff that's not positive. Being able to walk out our cabin and feel small for me is amazing. So like we have these huge granite faces. We're in the Sawtooth Wilderness. It's a constant reminder, and I've wondered if it was ever going to fade, and it hasn't in the last 5 years. That feeling of just grounded reality.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can get sucked into rabbit holes. Like I still work in the AI world for a day job. I can get stuck in these wormholes, but I can shut my laptop, walk outside, breathe deep air, not hear traffic, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is the world. This is where we started. This is everything I need. All that other shit, it can go away.
Yeah.
And it has. Like I've gone through job loss this past year. I've had to go through these cycles, and the constant is right outside. And my wife is a great reminder to me of that, of saying, you know what? We're okay. Like we don't need, like, we still fall into some of the trappings of modern life, of course. Like it's nice to have nice things. It's nice to have some modern amenities, but we have built up a resilience and an ability to be in touch with what real reality is, which is knowing where our food comes from, knowing how our water is sourced, knowing how our electricity stays on, having backups to all those things. Like that builds a confidence to really be okay with stuff turning off. And it's an interesting thing with reality, and what you were talking about is, I think what constitutes courageousness now is so interesting. Courageousness right now is to say, I want to go and hunt. I want to go and experience these things that are now taboo. And that might be a reflection on me being from the corporate AI world, but it is inundated with wokeism. So it's funny where I try to be as authentic of myself as I can be in my work culture. Like, LinkedIn, I post stuff about being an outdoorsman and things like that. And the irony over the past 5 years is I'll go on a video call and, I might have a coyote or something in some form of undress behind me. And, it might blur it, I might not, but I've kind of done some A/B testing. And when I show it, without a doubt, or without fail, rather, I have people that were on that call reach out to me afterwards in a non professional context and be like, tell me about what the heck you're doing. You're doing this job, you're doing your job well, but how are you living this life? And I want to know more.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many people curious about connecting with nature. But the funny and the most goofy thing is that takes courage today. It takes courage to say, I want to put my laptop away. I want to put my phone away. I want to put my social media away and learn more. And and it's crazy, but it is.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm going to draw a parallel to you and share something with you. I work currently a school teacher in a alternative school. So I don't know if I had this job. I might have just started it when we recorded a podcast last year. Metal detector, uniforms, no
Yep.
windows, kids aren't out of their seats, they're not allowed to talk, like all that. But what they have is a computer in front of them all day long. I'm
Yep.
not so much a teacher as I am a supervisor and teacher of record to like just maintain like I'm here for you. So what I found is this, and this is what's fascinating about humanity on a simple manner, and why public education's indoctrination and failing people, and how it all ties back into hunting and what you're talking about, is these kids, they have zero vocabulary.
Mm-hmm.
They aren't even able to pass their quizzes and tests because when they're reading stuff, they don't comprehend. There's no comprehension because they have zero vocabulary. And what they want to do is just Google a word.
Mm-hmm.
If they don't know the definition of a word, they'll just Google it. The issue with that is that in one ear, out the other, on one screen, gone the next.
Mm-hmm.
It's the scrolling life. This is the power of actually reading a book versus like reading Turning Feral versus scrolling and seeing something about Turning Feral and being like, oh, okay, yeah, I know that guy's story. Cool, gotcha. So I tell these students, I go, if you don't know a word, there's a dictionary right there. Well, I could just Google it. No, look it up. Look it up because it's going to stick with you a lot longer. When you go through the experience of something, it sticks, it lasts. And so all of a sudden they have a word and they're like, wow, okay. And I'm like, I'm a social studies teacher. And I care less. Like ultimately everyone just needs to learn vocabulary because that'll make everything else come to life. The point of what I want to get at with this and draw a parallel to you in your story is is artificial intelligence and a digital world. The algorithms are telling you what you want.
Mhm.
They're assuming and making assumptions based off of patterns that is already predicting your future, which is then out of your control. And not that we need to be control freaks, but to be human means to go through an experience that is organic. And the best way to do that is to connect with the organic. Like you
Yep.
said, you can go stand in the grass. That's real. And so these thoughts, I mean, this is such a beautiful story. I the timing of you and I recording this episode could not be any more perfect. But I want to share something that I wrote because one
Let's
of
hear it.
the biggest struggles, I cut my teeth in Western big game hunting in the mountains.
Yep.
I moved to Texas where hunting is common. And I mean
Mhm.
common to the point where my buddy who I had on the podcast last week to join me for the episode, he ended up sharing, he goes, "Man, you were talking to me about how hunting is human and we got to defend hunting and it's being attacked all over." He goes, "I just thought everyone hunted. I just
Mhm.
thought it was commonly accepted." He goes, "I didn't realize how big of an issue it is that it's not accepted." And I was like, yeah, it's, where you go, it really changes perspectives. So here I am in Texas having a love-hate relationship with the amount of animals I see, but the inability to really get out of the hunt what I want. There is
Mhm.
the unknown, but it's more of a cat and mouse chess game than it is like adventure.
Mhm.
It's trying patience while you sit and wait and staring at the same small expanse the entire time rather than getting up and moving and creating your own adventure. So I wrote this. I said, hunting public land on a non guided DIY hunt is the greatest leveler or equalizer for mankind. And why not being able to know the outcome of our authentic interaction with nature and the organic paves the way to a humble heart and the simplest of terms. Hunting is human at the purest essence when there is no ego involved. It takes the mightiest and most powerful of mankind and puts them on the same playing field for what is ultimately the truest form of Hunger Games.
I love it.
And as I'm here in Texas, enjoying these processes and coming off of a hunt where we lost a deer,
Mhm.
and I'm just having all these frustrations and emotions like boiling up inside me. Like, all I want to do is go to the mountains.
Yep.
All I want to do is yell it from a mountaintop and get real with God and be like, "Come on, man, where are you? Where am I?" And I'm not getting that right now currently. I also get to kill my ego through this
Yep.
process and go through the journey that I'm meant to go through, such as the surrendering to whatever the universe is bringing to me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can yell those same things from a tree stand. Tell you that much. It might even be a little more powerful, right? Like the why. I like that passage too, and I can say what you summed up with all those adjectives was exactly what myself and a friend who were spent a week out elk hunting here, DIY public land. It was tough, and it was elk herds are down after last winter. We have wolf problems. We were on a herd for 5 days. We were out in an area where there were only two other small groups of horse hunters, and we were on foot. They took a 6x6 out of that herd. There was a 5x5 and a spike. We were able to get on the 5x5 and get the gun up and 500-yard shot. And he dipped behind some trees right when we were about to pull the trigger and never saw him again.
Mm,
And, you know, it's adventure. It's all of that. It's frustration. It's emotion. It's the same thing you feel when you lose an animal, even near private land. I just think hunting, I think DIY public land, mountain hunting, definitely, you're almost guaranteed to feel all those arcs of emotion. But, it's any hunting, you're gonna lose an animal, you're gonna feel bad, you're gonna, you know, nail it one time and feel like a king. It's everything, and then most of the time, it's all of those.
Yeah. Um, one of the experiences that I had with the Texas hunting was at the beginning of the season. I reveal by Tacticam the cell cameras. They sent me a few, and I put them up for the lease. And I'm like, oh, dude, I can't wait to get these. Get pictures rolling in, and all of a sudden, pictures started rolling in. Buck,
Yep.
buck, big buck, good buck. Wow, that's like, and I'm like, geez, this is great. So I'm an archery hunter, and there's a lot, or I do all of it, but archery season opens first. So I'm like, okay, I need to hunt, man. It's been a long time. I'm seeing all these deer on camera, and I go and I do one of my very first sits, and I see a deer that's
Mhm.
younger. Now, when I say young, I mean if I saw this on public land, I would not ever be like justifying it at all. The
Yeah.
reason why I say it's a younger deer is when I posted this deer on social media and it said shoot or pass, everyone not from Texas said shoot. Everyone
Mhm.
from Texas said pass. And I
Interesting.
found that truly fascinating because they want to shoot more mature deer, um, and whatnot, and allow the genetics to pass on. And I'm still wrapping my head around that concept because I am a sustenance hunter. Not that shooting a young deer or old deer justifies or is better than one or the other. Moral of the story is I'm in my blind and I see this deer and it's wide. And I'm like, I want you. This is, I would say if I was to create a list, this is number 2 on the list, but number 1 on the blind in which I've been watching. Get this deer at 30 yards, have him broadside. I'm knocked. I'm filming. I'm all that. I'm ready to go. I send my arrow. Wow. Here it hit. I never got a chance to watch my arrow, but I heard it hit and it sounded great.
Uh-huh.
But the deer, instead of doing like a mule kick or jumping up, just sprinted straight forward and took off. And I was like, well, that sounded great, but that was a very weird reaction of that deer. So I give it some time and I go out and I look for blood and can't find my arrow, which it's flat ground. Like there's like arrows, I guess they take off a lot
Yep.
further than I really have expected. I've yet to find it. I don't know if it's buried in the dirt. Um, I find a little blood and then
Mhm.
a little bit of blood and then a little bit of blood. Ended up tracking this deer, ended up getting a dog to start tracking the blood.
Oh, wow.
Never found the deer.
Yep.
So the deer then is still alive and it's showing back up on my cameras.
Oh, wow.
And so I'm like, okay, well, I don't exactly know where I hit it. I'm assuming I put it in no man's land, above the
Yep.
lungs, below the spine, complete pass through, and no vitals touched. And it's just,
Those things are tough, man.
yes. And everyone from down here, they're like, oh, yeah, whitetails jump the string. I always aim lower with the archery on whitetails than typical. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe that's what happened. So modern rifle season rolls around, and first weekend, I don't see that deer. I'm hunting it. The next day, when I'm not hunting, that deer gets shot by somebody else.
Ah, man.
And so I'm fresh off of not recovering a deer that is living,
Yep.
not recovering a deer that I'm presuming did die, and then seeing the deer that I did shoot in a picture on a text message of like that should have been my buck. Like I shot that. I drew blood on that animal. So I've had an array of emotions and really attacking the ego. So you've said that you've read the book Surrender Experiment multiple times. I just
Yep.
got done reading that, and I've there's beauty in this. Is the idea of like we really just need to let it go.
Yeah.
Really just need to let it go. And you are such an inspiring human being because you have full on let it go and walked away from multiple things in your life in which people would never be able to do or never find the courage to do.
Yeah. And well, I appreciate that. And yeah, I mean, I love the surrender experiment. I was mentioning I was the officiant for a buddy's wedding who wanted some quotes from Michael Singer because he's been to some of his seminars, and he's played a lot in my life and my buddy's life, and sounds like yours as well. I mean it's so easy to get wrapped around the axle with social media, and it's funny being a relatively new person, you as well, into the hunting industry. Like a lot of people are wrapped up into their own egos.
Yeah.
It not everybody, and like there are wonderful people, and I've met so many fantastic people, but the people that I've met that have had the biggest impact on me are the people who just are out there doing it for exactly the right reasons. They enjoy it. They might be putting meat on the table. Some of them might be trophy hunters, but they're doing it because it's a joy and a privilege and an ability, an opportunity to reconnect with nature so often in a way that most people don't get to. And for me, it's like letting go of that ego, because you know, I've had pretty much all really great responses, especially from adult onset hunters and some, people who've been around for a while around the book saying, yeah, like this all makes sense. It's great. I love it. But then you get to some people like, well, you haven't paid your dues, or you haven't done this, that, or the other. And, it's really easy for somebody who's new to be hurt. I mean, I've felt it too. It's like, really? Like I'm out here trying, and I'm trying to connect and find my own way. Um, but letting that go, it's like, I'm here, I'm doing it. So it's my own path, and not letting other people's, positivity or negativity, really pull me one way or the other. Like I'm on my path and I'm enjoying every moment of it. And the second I'm not, then I'm not doing it for the right reasons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Excuse me.
You said earlier that you've really been diving into this trapping lifestyle. Like that's where you're finding your most fulfillment. Why is that?
That's a good question. And I've got something in my throat, so I apologize.
No worries.
Why is that? It's so intimate. Not that, hunting with a bow in the backcountry of any animal is an intimate experience, but trapping, you have to know that animal so well. And animals are so smart. And I put it in the book, and this is the same thing I tell people about trapping. And, it's not indiscriminate, it's targeted. And the idea that you want to get, say, a canine, a coyote, to step on a 6-inch by 6-inch metal pan in the vast wilderness, or even on private property in Texas, you get a 30-acre farm, you expect a canine's, 2-inch by 2-inch paw to step on that. That takes knowing their pattern. So it is, all of my hunting, elk and everything else, I'm out really looking at wolves. I know where the elk herds are. I know where mule deer might be. But for me, trapping, I'm looking at canines and trying to figure out what their patterns are, figure out what their paths are like, what their habits are, and then trying to target them with a tiny piece of steel.
Mm-hmm.
It's a challenge. It's just something that's really sucked me in.
Dude, so fascinating. Do you know who Byron South is?
Not by name, no.
I did a podcast with him this last February, right before the Hunt Expo, where you and I got to meet. And I got to tell you, you need to connect with him.
All right.
He was talking on the episode. I'll have to, when we get off air, find out what number it was. He was saying most coyotes, for example, are right. He says right-handed, right
Yeah.
pod. So how they approach the set, he actually knows. Okay, it's going to be this foot, and then this foot, and then I also will set it. It's always three. What is it? He said 6 inches by 4 inches or something like that off to that side, which you probably know this information already. But to be that predictive to how they step, like, that's next level.
Boy, I mean, that's where I talked about having that three-legged beaver. I nailed it. That beaver stepped right on my trap, and I have his front paw, which a front paw catch on a beaver is difficult. Nailed it. Perfect set. Like I knew right where that beaver was going to go based on how all the sign and everything else. And it was a mistake on how I had it set that ruined it. But it's just this experience. And then the problem is they learn. So you have one thing that messes up and you don't capture that animal. You got to go back to the drawing board and start trying other tactics. You're just so smart. It's unreal. So much smarter than me.
Well, that and that paw that you were planning on catching, it's not there anymore.
Exactly. And my chances have just reduced by a quarter.
Right. Oh, too soon. I don't know.
I'm going to go out tomorrow morning and see if I can't reset on it. So we'll see. They're sturdy animals too. But the other thing too is just the life cycle of trapping. So it's not just trapping an animal; it's the processing. Like it's made me such a better butcher because you end up putting up fur. So you're taking care of fur. You're going to fur sales. I know people can't see it, but I've just got rooms full of like leathered beaver tail, beaver dick bones. It's just, you use everything and you use like castor glands. Like I have a whole shelf full of lures and baits and skunk essence, which my wife loves, and all sorts of stuff that just kind of, it's a deep rabbit hole to go into. And just to cap this topic off too, it's just also for me as a kid who grew up reading mountain man books, trapping is exactly what the West was founded on, the fur trade. And it is an interesting and intimate reconnection to where and why we even came out here in the first place, that I really cherish.
Powerful. I've since starting my hunting journey and doing all the reflection and outdoor writing and that I've established, in the religious world, specifically in Christianity, they always talk about Christian worldview. Like we want it to be universal, to be able to view it from whatever country, region, area around the world you are. I feel like hunting doesn't have a worldview. Hunting is so localized. You could say trapping. I'm going to use the term hunting, outdoorsy. Is so localized, and so we always talk about the North American model of conservation as being like this most powerful thing, but it doesn't apply to Africa. It doesn't apply to these other locations because how they are. So when I think about hunting, I really can only think of it in a North American model, and really in the essence of a United States model, where when we read in our history books that this idea of manifest destiny is what we're founded on. Like your life is out there. Go create it. Go get it. And we've gone sea to shining sea. And the only place left to go now is up.
Yep.
Up into the mountains. And that's where our life lies. If it's there for the taking if you want it.
I couldn't say it better myself. And I think for folks listening, I mean, it's out there. I'm proof of that. And you don't have to go full bore to dive in with both feet and do it. You can start by stepping out in your grass, like we talked about. But like you said, it's there for the taking.
Yeah. Dude, go find it. One question I have, and you might be able to speak to people on this, is financially, and only reveal how much you feel comfortable with. But the idea of like, I'm gonna go buy a cabin in the woods, or I'm gonna buy some acreage, but then you talk about having a snowmobile or like some type of ATV or stuff to get around. Realistically, like prices are so expensive nowadays, especially on rural land because people want it so bad. Was that a fight in order to afford and create that lifestyle from the start, or what was your viewpoint on that?
I was very lucky, and I'm very honest and open to this with the book. So first and foremost, when we bought the cabin, it was pre-COVID. Like nobody was really looking at this 35-person town that has no grocery store, no gas station, anything. So like it was a unique environment where we could afford very easily this cabin. Now, post COVID, like looking on Zillow, it's like, how did this little ramshackle cabin? I'm looking around it too, like seeing bare walls and stuff, like, triple in price. And it's very reflective of everywhere. Like you said, people want this rural taste and the prices reflect that. So it's very hard now. But along the way, you know, my first snowmobile was $1,000. It's a beater. It's from like 2003. So, I mean, we were very budget cautious. And what we did was we kind of went through a priority list of what we needed to do the bare minimum of what we wanted to do from like trapping. It's like, okay, get $1,000 13-year-old snowmobile that I can get and go on a trap line with. And that's changed. But overall, I was coming from a very lucrative career, to be frank. Like I was in artificial intelligence. It was something that was more than paying the bills and allowed me to do a lot of different things, like get the tools I needed and go on some guided hunts to kind of beat down that learning curve, things like that. But again, that was my personal circumstances, and I was very lucky for that. But it is very expensive now, and things have just taken an absurd turn over the last few years.
Yeah, yeah, I I totally agree. Um, I actually own 10 acres of raw land in Montana,
Nice.
in Gallatin County that butts up
Oh, nice.
to public land. So my 10 acres is larger than just that now because
Oh,
yeah, it's ideal. I am at some point gonna be building upon it to have it be something that I can use and have it be a resource more for the family. So
oh yeah. Well, I'll be visiting there. That's not too far. That's like a 7-hour drive.
heck yeah, dude, it'll be awesome. We're gonna have to. You and I need to have an adventure together.
We'll do spring black bear this year if we can make it. If we make it work, come out here.
Okay, Idaho. We'll make it happen. I got vengeance with Idaho. I've been there 2 years in a row, and I've missed on 2 different bears.
So I'm on the bear. So I've got eyes on 13 different bear around our place. So,
dude, speaking of which, what happened with the bear lady? In your book, you talk about going over to the house, her pulling the shotgun on you and all that, but there was no follow up with the bear.
Yeah, I never killed it. The bear kind of just disappeared. I'm assuming some hunter shot it because there were people up there. But Sharon's still alive. I was up by her house today. Unfortunately, like dementia is setting in more and more, so it's a little bit scarier walking up to her door.
She might shoot you
but,
this time.
No, but she's still there, still kicking. She gets somebody in town to go behind her in her car, but she still drives herself in and out when she needs to. She's a G.
Wow. Thug life. Thug life.
86 years old, still hammering.
I love it. Brother, we're going to wrap this up for the sake of everyone. However, I'm sure there's so many questions that people listening to this episode are holding on to or going to come up with. What's the best way for them to reach out to you and connect with you?
Yeah, I mean, I am, speaking of, I had pushed away social media for a long time. My wife convinced me to get one like a month or two ago. So I do have an Instagram handle now. It's at Let Me Die Learning. I also have a Substack where I'm doing a near daily kind of outdoor devotional. It's very short. It's just my thoughts on any given day and a little bit of a rewilding action anybody could take, whether you live in an urban or rural environment. And that's also at Let Me Die Learning. So either of those two places are the best way to reach out and get a hold of me.
I have signed up for that, so I get daily email notifications whenever you post, and I always enjoy reading it. And so, don't forget to cook your beans, right?
Amen.
I love it, brother. Do you got any writing that you got? Is there a second book or another something that you're going to dive into?
I've been playing in fiction lately, so I ended up releasing 2 books this past year with a publisher. The series is called The Bone Scraper, and it's real Idaho history, but it's in a historical fiction. It's kind of Quentin Tarantino meets Louis L'Amour. One's based here in Atlanta, Idaho. The other one's in the Owahis, kind of South Idaho. And then I'm playing with another book called Remote, which is kind of a venture into the modern 30-something-year-old's life and dabbling in suicide and everything else like that. So it's a little bit of a darker Fight Club-esque book, but yeah, just keeping the tools sharp. And
I love that. Love it.
Right.
That's beautiful. You got to keep them sharp. It's like why I had to pull out some books to start reading again. It's like I'm not sharpening myself.
Well, it's like they say with authors, you have to read as much as you write.
I have learned that I read your book for the content, but I also read your book for the layout and the how you wrote it. Really fascinating. Guys, go sign up for Zach's Substack. You're not going to be disappointed, truly. I'm really fascinated by that. Go pick up yourself Turning Feral, find it on Amazon. Anywhere else? Can you find the book anywhere else?
Yeah, Barnes & Noble, Walmart, other places. So you can kind of find it anywhere.
Love it. Go turn feral. Go join Zach on his journey and really start fulfilling your own soul as you dive into the unknown. Guys, if you enjoy this episode, please like, share, subscribe, leave a rating and a review as it only helps further our mission of mentorship as conservation. If you're also interested in supporting the show, go to soulseekersnation.com, go to our online store, pick up yourself a hat, a shirt, some swag, and be proud and represent that platform as we are all a part of the nation of soul seekers. Be blessed, freedom on. Remember that life is happening for you. It's not happening to you, and that you are not a result of the circumstances in your life as you get to create your own existence. Be blessed, freedom on. For Johnny Mack, Zach Hanson, stay soulful, everybody. If you enjoyed today's podcast and want to support the show, you can always like, share, subscribe, and leave a rating as it helps us share our mission of mentorship as conservation. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of Soul Seekers Nation as we transform lives through primal adventure. If you want to get more connected with the podcast, check out the Soul Seekers Nation Facebook group as I look forward to connecting with you on the next episode. So stay tuned and stay soulful.